Welcome to You Can Call Me Goddess, because you're so much more than a queen. My name is Manouk Vink. I am a trained intuitive energy healer specialized in transforming your body and your life. In this podcast, we are going to be diving into everything to unlock the goddess that you are within you. Think of it as the ultimate glow up from the inside out. It's time to unlock your power. It's time to unlock your magic. So sit back and enjoy the show. Hello, guys, and welcome back to another You Can Call Me Goddess podcast. It is 2026. We are in the new year, and I hope all of you are feeling the new energy, are excited about it, because I am. I definitely want to talk a little bit about, how we often think new year, new me, and my perspective on that. But I think we'll leave that for another podcast, because today I really want to dive into talking about the holiday healing that I did. So as some of you may have known, I hosted or you may have participated, I hosted a holiday healing, a Christmas healing right before the holidays. And for me, it was just so incredible because I did it for myself as well. And it's so awesome to see when you do these healings on yourself, the magic that appears. And why that is so important is so that I can root to it fully, so that you really feel that I know in my core that this shit works. Like, this works. This stuff freaking works. And I really feel like this was, it was just amazing to see how everything unfolded over the trip. So basically, if you don't know, I will explain this a little bit. I sometimes host healing sessions, group healing sessions. I do healings with my clients and in group programs. I also add in healings and things like that. And so what I basically do is I set up your timeline so that your timeline is the perfect timeline to achieve the result that you desire. And this can be with many things. This can be with weight loss. This can be with tackling a limiting belief. This can be what I did for the holiday season to achieve the best holiday ever, to have the least amount of triggers with your family, and to have the best holiday ever. And on top of that, I did some extra healings to clear out contagions and stay emotionally balanced. And that, in combination with healing your self-image and the perception that you have of yourself and working on your self-love, does literal magic. And we're going to dive into more of that as well. I have spoken about how self-image healing and self-love is the key to manifesting everything that you desire. And believe me when I tell you that when I first heard that, I was like, yeah, right. How does that, who wants to work on self-love? I just want to manifest more money. I want to manifest my dream body. I want to manifest more success in my business. But it all starts with self-love and self-image. That is the core of you achieving the results that you desire. But more on that, because I have enough podcasts to go over that. I've gone over that, and you've heard me talk about this before. And a big component of that is also staying connected with your true core self. And that's something that we've discussed also in previous podcasts and webinars. And that really, the reason I'm bringing all of this up, because all of these pieces of the puzzle really allowed me to have the best family vacation that I have had in years. And it was mind-blowing to see how much the work had worked. I not only had one of the best trips with my family, without triggers, without any drama, without any issues or heightened emotions, on my part at least. And I also manifested that this trip was basically all paid for. So I didn't spend anything except for, I bought a bunch of beef tallow. You guys are going to laugh at me. But honestly, where I live, I can't get the products that I want. And we went to South Africa, and there I get so excited. I don't know about you, but I get so excited when I walk into like supermarkets and health stores and things like that. Like, that's the first thing that I do. And that's my dream when I when I go to the US and things like that, I love going into supermarkets and seeing all the products and all of that stuff. I get very excited about that. And I do the same in Africa because I love the large selection of things. Like some people think it's too much. I love it. I get so excited. Like you can drop me off in a supermarket and I will have the best time ever looking at all the products, looking at all the options. And especially because I'm really focusing on non-toxic skincare and makeup and all of this stuff, and becoming the more non-toxic than I have in the past, and trying to get rid of all the bad stuff in my food and in my diet and in my makeup and skincare. And maybe eventually we'll also look into the clothes area. And even shampoos and things like that. So the moment I see like a health store, I get very excited and I start looking into all the products, and especially because I don't have those products where I live right now. So I was super excited, and yeah, I got all the goodies there. So that's what I spent most of my money on. But the rest of it, even to the point, and we spoke about, I think it's 2 podcasts ago because I know I skipped a week. We spoke about the whole thing about fair exchange, right? And it was so funny because when we spoke about that, when I recorded that podcast, I didn't know that my dad was going to upgrade my seat. So I didn't do anything other than work on my value, root to my value, like I was talking to you about inside the Fair Exchange podcast. I didn't do anything other than see my own value, root to it, know that I was deserving, and really root to it, like really emotionally, because emotions are the core of it. And I want to talk about that more as well in the coming weeks, about how emotions are really the key to shifting your creative field and your energy and attracting the things that you desire. And without even asking for it or anything or expecting it, I got an upgraded seat on the way to South Africa, paid for as well, with my ticket, with accommodation. So this was all in all a massive win. And when I tell you that this holiday has shown me so much growth and actually how much the work had worked, it was really exciting to see and to observe the growth and the work literally manifesting into reality, and seeing how much had shifted from me working on my own energy. Nothing else, just me working on my self-image, working on my own energy, doing my energetic healings. Just from that, I could see the results, and it was so cool to observe and so cool to see. So we're going to dive in. So basically, right before the holiday season, I hosted a healing to set up your energy, to get rid, or like to have the best holiday season ever. And the aim of that healing was to stay grounded in who you are, not get affected by limiting beliefs, because we are a sponge to other people's thoughts and belief systems. We take on 95% of other people's thoughts, and not to get rocked by family members, triggers, things like that, because that can be very triggering. And in the previous podcast, I spoke about being the black sheep of the family, especially if you feel like that. And I'm that. I am 100% that. I have opposite views to the majority of my family, and that can be very triggering. And I used to get very emotional also about their views and how they would think about me and how they would feel about me. I would get very emotional about it, and it would affect me a lot. And then it would also make me question my decisions and question the things that I was doing. And I've always been a bit of the one that went against the grain. If you know a little bit about my story, I struggled with eating disorder. I did a bodybuilding competition. Then my family is very much like, they love to enjoy life. So they like to have drinks. They like to enjoy good food and things. And I do too. But because of my bodybuilding experiences, I was very focused on my diet to the point that it was extreme, and they viewed it as extreme. Then also I stopped drinking, and now I went on and off with adding in more drinks into my diet and alcohol here and there, but my taste for it has just kind of gone away. And the added knowledge that alcohol does affect your intuition, but that's something that we can talk about maybe on a later podcast, because it depends how developed your intuition is, how much you're going to notice the effects and how much of the alcohol that you're drinking. But for me, I really noticed this trip that I just was not craving it anymore. I had great non-alcoholic beverages, and I don't need it to have fun. So, and there was also a little bit of a thing with that in the past where I would be judged for not having a drink. Like, I remember everybody ordering and looking at me like, oh my God, what is she going to do? What is she going to do with food? Like, it was this thing. And the reason it used to be this thing is because I wasn't rooted to why I was doing it, and because I was still questioning why I was doing certain things. And the same thing goes when it comes to politics. I have opposite views to my family. And I also have this is a topic that we're going to dive into at some point. But I have these views also because I follow my intuition. I listen to my intuition. I intuitively look in on things. I get my information from source, for example, and areas that some people might not be rooted to because they read articles and watch the news, and that to them is credible, when to me, it is not. So, of course, there's pieces of accurate information in there, but there's always a bias and things like that. But that's a topic for another day. See, this is my problem. I always want to go down different tangents and things like that. But why I'm bringing that up is because the more rooted you are to something, the less someone is going to poke holes in your story. So let's just start from the beginning. First of all, I had done a lot of work right before the vacation. So basically, we decided, actually last minute, I decided to join. My family decided to take a trip to South Africa for Christmas and New Year's. And last year, I had one of the worst New Year's Eves. I was all alone. Another story for another day, maybe again. But I was all alone, and yeah, it was my worst New Year's Eve ever. And in the year after, so in 2025, I did a lot of growing. I really honed in on my intuition, shifted the business, did all kinds of things. And it's just so cool to see the growth and the results of all the work. So right before the holidays, I was doing a lot of rooting to my value. And I was doing a lot of work on my self-image, self-worth, seeing where I was still having holes. And also the universe showed me where there were still holes because I was feeling stuck. And it was a bit of a tough couple of months before the end of the year. But now you'll see it's all because it's time to grow. It's time to up level. It's time to upgrade. So right before the trip, I actually was rooting a lot to my value. I was looking at all the angles where I still needed to root to the value that I felt like I was lacking, right? Because that's the thing. I've had this literally recently. One of my clients tell me I was very triggered by a read, because the thing is, we're going to feel triggered if we feel like we're doing so much work and then an intuitive looks in and says to you, yeah, you still don't value yourself. Listen, I've been there multiple times. Then you're going to be like, what the fuck? But I've been doing all this work. What do you mean I don't value myself? So this is why when you're a high frequency being, when you're meant to be guiding other people, your higher self, the universe, is going to show you exactly where you're still having holes in your energy and why you need to shift these things. And that is so that you can upgrade, up level, and really reach higher potentials, so that whenever someone comes to you, you always have another angle to look at. If you didn't have to go through that struggle, you wouldn't have that angle to look at. So I did a lot of that rooting. And then I also did the healing. So I basically did a healing where I set up my timeline so that I would have the best holiday, so that I would have the best holiday, least amount of no triggers if possible, and no drama, and just enjoy, and no financial stress. I set up that timeline a little bit before the holiday so that it would have time for my timeline to orchestrate and actually set the universe to set things into place, my energy to set things into place, so that that actually manifested. And I do those healings and then I leave it. I don't look back into it. I just leave it. And then I'm like, okay, that's done and dusted. We know that's done. And then also over the last few months, I've been doing a contagion healing every 48 hours to set up my energy so that I don't get affected by negative thoughts, negative belief systems, human programming, and also that I'm only making decisions that are connected to my true core self and not my programmed self. So I was doing a lot of healing work. A lot of healing work on top of the clearings, on top of the connections, all of that stuff. I did that all. And when I tell you it paid off, I am not joking, because the moment I first traveled to my parents and the moment I got there, I just don't know, I felt the abundance everywhere. I actually manifested some extra money, and that was a really nice surprise and gift right before my trip. And I'm going to dive into that because there was another component to that, but I want to do a whole nother podcast on something that was in my creator field that blocked more financial support from coming in. And I'm going to talk about that. So, but that was a component of it. So I was actually doing a lot of work right before, energetic work. And it's so cool because when you're in the moment doing that work, you're like, okay, let's see. And then when it all starts falling into place, you're like, wow, this is so cool. So I already felt the abundance. I mean, I was already feeling the energy. My parents were being super loving and kind to me. They wanted to like treat me. My dad upgraded my seat. Then it was just all around great. And then we got with everybody on the trip. And on the trip, the energy with my family, my brother and my sister, my cousin was there, and my parents, and it was just really great. And especially because I know that my family are opinionated people. They have strong characters, and they are very vocal about how they feel about certain things. And I am always the odd one out with certain things. I'm always doing the random stuff that people don't understand. So I was fully prepared for those conversations to come up. But at the same time, I had this inner knowing that I'd done this healing and I'd done this value work and rooting to my beliefs and really settling in that I felt like I could handle it all. I could handle anything that was going to be thrown my way. And honestly, throughout the entire holiday, it actually began when I flew to my parents' house so they live in the Netherlands. I live in Serbia. I know we're super like all over the place. And then we went to South Africa. And actually, if you don't know already, I grew up abroad. So I used to live in South Africa. So South Africa has a very special place in my heart. I love that place. It is so freaking gorgeous. I am a summer girl, 100,000%. So getting away from the winter. So I'm struggling being back in the winter right now, which I'm also going to talk about a little bit because it's a little bit of a come down after such a beautiful trip. And so we traveled there. So first we had a little bit of a family event, which went really well. I actually was like getting all the energetic feedback from family. They were like respecting the decisions that I was making. They were very supportive. I just felt love and support all around and no triggers. And then when we went on the trip as well, the same thing. I have had trips where I've literally felt with my family, I felt ostracized. I felt like I didn't belong because my brother and my sister are very close. So I felt kind of pushed out and kind of alone because I have different views and I live differently. I'm different. I'm just a little different. And so it was so awesome to see that this trip, I didn't feel like that at all. I felt totally included. I felt totally supported. I felt totally seen. I felt totally like maybe not fully understood, but respected for at least like respected as in there was no opposition or triggers for me at least. So on this trip, I felt totally zen. Even when there was a little bit of drama, because of course there's going to be triggers when the family's all together. We're all adults now. We have our own lives. We have our own views. There's things happening with the parents. There's things happening with brother and sister. There's just, all those characters, all those personalities coming and staying in one house together. At least we had like our own space. I actually had such a good room as well. Like, I don't know. I had such a good room. It was like a separate little room with my own shower and little kitchenette, and it was gorgeous. And I just had my own space. But honestly, I had such a good time. And it was very interesting to me, especially with all the growing and the manifesting and the work that I'd been doing over the past 2 years, and then going on this trip, or more obviously, but specifically over the past 2 years, I'd really honed in on some stuff, and being there and seeing how my energy felt so stable and so zen throughout it all. Actually, there is a little caveat which I'm going to add on, because there were some reflections showing up, some body reflections, but I'll dive into that a little bit later. I was like, wow, this is so cool. I love this. I loved being together with my family, having a good time, and not feeling on edge at all. I didn't feel on edge. I didn't feel ostracized. I didn't feel like I didn't belong, if that makes sense, which I have felt that way before, where I felt kind of pushed out, like I wasn't part of it. Like, they didn't want me there. And that's obviously all my self-worth stuff, right? I didn't feel that way at all. And even when there were the triggers that I was talking about amongst other family members, there were little moments where I did notice some things that I could work on when it comes to self-worth. But it was very interesting, because instead of getting super emotional about it, I was just there and I was kind of observing myself and being like, okay, this is interesting. Why is this popping up for me right now? What does that mean for me? And the same thing when there were like triggers amongst other family members, being there and observing it was super interesting. So I was like sitting there and observing how those triggers were manifesting and what was being talked about and what that meant. And it was very interesting, because the issues that everybody is experiencing with each other in the family have to do with either the most of them. There's obviously some other things. Well, most of them, yeah, it has to do with either a self-worth thing. So, putting yourself first, deciding for yourself, or not feeling good enough, or not feeling like you fit in, or not feeling like you belong, or like you're not being respected or valued. This is where all of that came from for everybody in the family, and all of us coming together with our own value stuff and with our own backstories and with our own backgrounds and our own perceptions of the reality of our childhood and the things that we've been through, and our parents and siblings. It was very interesting to actually observe how the triggers were, manifesting between each family member and why, and to kind of see what was happening. So for me, during the holiday, I actually kind of felt like maybe not a fly on the wall, kind of, but like I was observing this, and it was very interesting to watch all these personalities and the self-worth stuff. And actually some of us in the family, even me, deciding to choose ourselves instead of doing something for somebody else. So I'll give you an example. There was a day that everybody wanted to go on an excursion together, and I kind of didn't want to go on that excursion. I didn't feel pulled. I even intuitively felt that I shouldn't go. So I just basically was like, you know what, guys, this is all great and stuff. I know I already paid for the ticket, but I'm going to actually just do my own thing. And everybody respected that. There was a moment, for example, we had 2 cars, and, it was always like, okay, I want to go in that car because I want to, hang out a little bit with them instead of with them. And then there were I could tell some triggers of like, oh, why are you not sitting with us? It's so funny. It's so interesting to see, because it's all family members, but it's so interesting. And then still being like, you know what? I'm choosing myself. I'm choosing what I want to do. And after that, after having done that, actually the other people respecting that decision. So it was super interesting to observe and to see. And even more interesting was the feedback that I was getting. The feedback that I was getting from my family was actually how I was just chilling and enjoying the whole thing. And I was getting a lot of like positive like reinforcement and actually positive feedback from my family about how I was handling things, how I was viewing things, and all of that stuff. And even more interesting and more important, but this is where I want to dive into it a little bit more. There was a moment. So there is this one thing. Me and my family, especially my sister, she's very, very, very passionate about her political beliefs, and she's very well read on these things. And so me and her don't have the same views. Me and my family do not have the same views. Sure, we overlap in a lot of things, and our intentions are good from all of us, obviously. Like, we all have good intentions, but with me being who I am and doing what I do, I have a very different, how do I say, list of sources that I go to get my information. And also I intuitively tap in and verify whether something is correct or incorrect. And that also the spiritual side of it, the dark force side of it, all of that, those components, maybe some people are not ready to accept or see. So if it's difficult when you can see that stuff and you know that stuff, and then your family member does not take that as or value that as truth, right? And so there's an interesting, I want to go into too many directions here. The thing is, there was a moment, and I was actually so proud of this whole moment because it could have been so triggering and I could have felt very attacked, but I didn't. So, and I was very worried about this because I have opposite views to the rest of my family. So it's basically one against, how many were we with? 1 against 6, sorry. 1 against 6 because we were with 7 total. Yes. And I was like worried for this conversation because I was like, okay, if this comes up, how am I going to handle it, right? Because I know how well read my sister is. My dad, I'm not even going to get started with him on politics at all because he's just not open to seeing a different side. So pick your battles, right? But we were sitting outside in the sun having a drink with the majority, except for my parents. And actually, one of my siblings, I don't remember who it was either my brother or my sister, brought up the topic. They were actually like, you know what? Let's not sweep it under the rug because we all know your views, and let's actually just be open about it and have a conversation about it. And I was like, okay. I was like, cool. This is going to be a fun test for me. I was like, okay, let's do it. So to be very honest, it actually was so kind of like refreshing to have that conversation. And we could even joke about it at some point during the holiday, my views and the other view. And it was so relieving that it was no longer this elephant in the room that nobody spoke about, because I never feel safe to talk about my views just because I know the backlash that I will get because they're so different to everybody else's. But the work that I had done over the past years and rooting to it and being more solid in my beliefs really was showing up in this moment, because yes, they were very straightforward and very solid in the beliefs that they had, but they were so respectful and understanding. And even though they couldn't maybe comprehend where I was coming from due to their own beliefs and, not knowing the intuitive component that I do and not having that perspective, I really felt like they respected for the first time the fact that I had those views and could just let it be that I had opposite views to them and not harp on it. Harp on it. I think that's for longer. However, and even to the point that my cousin kind of backed me up and was like, you know what, Manouk, you are totally free to say your opinion. You have freedom to say your opinion and say what you want. And it is difficult with your brother and sister because they can be quite intense with their beliefs. And it was really nice. I felt supported. I felt heard. I maybe didn't felt fully it to a point. And that's where I want to bring in the caveat, because even me and my sister, it was actually the first time in such a long time that me and my sister had connected in a way, in the way that we did, and actually felt like sisters again, just because we are so different, and actually could have a full-blown conversation about these things without either of us, well, my sister got a little emotional, but without either of us getting fully triggered or offended or, like that. It was just very beautiful to see that whole thing unravel and have a full-blown conversation. And even this was one of the most coolest parts about it, that I was sitting with her and we were really bonding. It was really cute. We were all sitting in the living room of this house that we were staying in the evening, like reading, me and my sister reading. We were both reading the same book franchise, which was really fun. Fourth Wing, loving it, by the way. And it was just so fun because we were connecting over that. And then my dad was reading the news. He always does. And then my brother was watching a show, and we were like cute, like sitting all together doing that. And me and her actually got into this discussion, and I gave her this really cool tool on how to root to belief systems about herself. And it was so cool because for the first time, she was really like interested in this tool that I was giving her. And she was like really on board with it and very excited about it. And it was just really, really cool because even if any of you know, and this is one of the things, like when you are getting into this work, when you're doing specific work, any work for that matter, your family members are going to be the hardest judges, except apart from yourself, because they will not unsee who you were to them. So they will always see you as their older sister, a little sister, or for me, only oldest sister, or for my mom, you're their daughter, and they can't disconnect that and see you only as a professional. So even when I was going through my bodybuilding phase and I was doing fitness and stuff, my brother and my sister and my family members were actually very hesitant to take fitness advice from me because they viewed me as too extreme, right? And there's always this weird like resistance when it comes to family members. But now that I've gotten more rooted and settled in my value, they actually come to me to ask for advice. And even on the trip wanted to do a workout with me. And I did a whole group workout with them. And it was what I'm trying to say in this entire podcast was that it was so amazing and so cool to see that the healing that I'd done had worked in such amazing ways. And I literally had the result that I desired. I had the best holiday that I've had in years with my family. I was not triggered. I felt closer to my siblings and to my family and my cousin. And I had a great time. I felt respected. I felt seen. I mean, not that that's the main thing, but for the first time, I didn't feel left out. And that was all because I did the healing. I worked on the contagions, and I also rooted to my value. I did the self-image healing. I did the self-love work. And to just come together, because family moments, relationships, things are like that, are the biggest moments where you're going to see how much you've grown. Because they are the biggest triggers. And if you don't know already, and if you haven't heard me say it in previous podcasts already, triggers are there to show you what you still need to work on. And of course, I'm not saying there were none, like there weren't zero, there were little moments, but the amount that I was triggered compared that I used to be, and the emotional reactions that I used to have compared to what I was having now just showed me the amount of growth that I made and how powerful it was. So the combination of everything really showed me how powerful and got me more rooted to the work. And it was just so cool that even my brother, word for word, said something, because we have a very strong limiting belief in the family that we've inherited from my dear father, that money is scarce and that, we have to hold on to our money, and, money is always a thing. It's a big topic of conversation, to the point that on the last night, my brother even said, yeah, it was really cool. Not even money was an issue on this trip. And then he even laughed and he was like, haha, because dad picked up the bill most of the time. And I am telling you, only for 2 times he made a comment about that. But before that, my dad would make a big thing about, he'll just be like, okay, now it's enough. Now I'm not spending any more money. But this time he just did it and was just really free with it. Only at the end did he have a little bit of that, but the amounts of what it used to be and this trip was such a change. So hearing my brother say that was word for word something that I put in the healing, and to hear him word for word say that this was so good because it wasn't an issue during this trip, and everybody actually feeling that way. I did a clearing of the house and made sure that everybody's heavy energies were pushed out throughout the trip. So I'm curious to see if they felt just as good, because my brother and my sister actually stayed and my cousin did too. Ugh, I wish I really wanted to. There was a little moment where I was like, I'm going to stay. But then I was like, no, I need to. Intuition was like, you're excited to get back into things. You want to just start getting back into things and planning different trips and things like that and working on the new things for 2026. So it was just, I don't know. This was just so cool. However, I was going to say in the beginning of this podcast, there were some reflections going on. And so if you know, reflections are a way of showing imbalances, emotional imbalances. And you might be wondering, okay, but Nuke, you said you weren't emotional. You said you weren't triggered. So why were there body reflections? So we're going to dive into that a little bit. Basically, I got burnt on the first day, second day, at some point in the trip. And I got burned also because, I wanted to find the best non-toxic sunscreen. I was struggling with that a little bit. So I just tried to stay in the sun, but African sun is different, I'm telling you. And I got burnt, but I wouldn't have gotten burnt if I was not an energetic match to getting burnt. So a burn has to do with, so if you're sunburned, that has to do with anger. So even though consciously I wasn't experiencing any anger or triggers or things like that, subconsciously, I still felt like in the beginning of the trip, at least before we had the politics conversation, I couldn't fully express myself and I couldn't fully express my emotions and views on certain things. And I subconsciously was angry about that. And so this is the thing with body reflections, right? So, or any reflections for that matter, consciously, you won't know. So in the forefront of your mind, you won't feel like it's happening. And that's because the ego is protecting you. But subconsciously, that emotion is playing. And the only way that you know about that emotion is through a reflection. So either in a relationship or in your body. So it will show you that there's still an imbalance somewhere. So I was having it with the burn on my body. And it was showing me that I was angry that I couldn't fully express myself. And I was also angry with the way that I was being perceived because I got a little bit of a burn on my face. And so I really quickly did a healing on that, reverse the reflection. And actually it wasn't that bad. It was just, it healed quite quickly. So that was very interesting. So even though I'd done the healing, and that's the thing, my experience was great. Like I didn't feel triggered at all. So the healing worked. It 100% worked. But it was still showing me, these body reflections were still showing me, okay, there's still a little imbalance there that you need to work through and see why you're still feeling that way. Then on top of that, it was so random. Like you're going to South Africa. We weren't like even in Thailand or I don't know, where you normally get stomach bugs or you hear about it, right? Or I don't know where else people often get stomach bugs. But South Africa, never. The whole family had a stomach bug. It was crazy. One by one. So first it was my cousin and my dad who got it pretty badly. So we thought it was food poisoning. But then all of us went. And it was like a 24-hour thing. But then for the majority of us, it was a 24-hour thing. But then, for example, for me and I think my mom, we kind of had something that was kind of lingering. So it wasn't that I was super sick because I kept testing if I was an energetic match to becoming like super sick. But I kept getting a no, which was true because I didn't get super sick. I just got a little bit uncomfortable and had a little bit of intestinal issues and things like that. Just struggles with that, stomach bloating, a little bit of that. And so I don't even remember if I was actually bloated, but just uncomfortability. And then my brother and my sister, they had it on separate days, but they were out for 24 hours. So was my dad. And my cousin kind of did too, had it more intensely, but she powered through. And why I'm bringing this up, this stomach bug was so interesting because, again, you have to be an energetic match to catching it. And then the symptoms varied so much between us. And that just goes to show how body reflections are so specific with what you emotionally are going through. So I didn't have it much in my stomach. I had it more in my intestines. So somewhere I wasn't absorbing nourishment from certain situations. And I think it ties all back into, what I was, my sunburn. So not seeing the nourishment in some of the conversations that they were having. And I felt like I couldn't fully express my emotions about it. Although I wasn't consciously feeling it, subconsciously that was still playing somewhere, that I was like, I can't fully express myself. And I couldn't see the nourishment in the things maybe that they were saying, right? So even though consciously and throughout the holiday didn't really affect me, I still had an amazing time. Subconsciously, it was still at play. And that's why it was still affecting me. However, with everybody else, stomach has to do with things happening to you in your past. So how interesting that my brother and my sister, for example, had it more in their stomach, right? And so they had felt more of something being triggered from them past, which isn't crazy if you're with your family and you're back in the family dynamic that you used to be in, but now you're an adult, so things are being triggered from your past. And obviously I could decode the body reflections more and more, but what I want you to understand in this situation is how cool that is. It's so cool to see how these body reflections were showing specifically where the imbalances were in each of us and what it was trying to communicate to us, and each with specific symptoms. And I also wanted to add in there that even though consciously and with the healing that I'd done, I was seeing the results so magically with the healing that I'd done, that I didn't perceive any imbalances or issues or things like that. Only maybe a small minute moment where I was like, "Ooh, interesting." But I could observe it with a bird's eye view and be like, "Oh, wow, that's interesting. That's popping up. Let me dive into why that's popping up," and without being super emotional about it. The interesting part there is that subconsciously there could still be something that you're triggered about. And then your body is going to show you that there's still an imbalance. And why your body will show you that is because your higher self, your body, your soul wants to grow to the highest potentials. And if you can start perceiving those moments and be like, okay, super interesting. Apparently there is something that I'm still triggered about here. Let me just figure that out, because you want to get 100% of that figured out so that you can reach your highest potentials. And so it was really, really interesting to watch how this healing had unfolded, to see also that the work that I had done was really, really showing up and really showing me how I had balance so much out, and how much more grounded I was in my decisions and who I was and my value, and how that was so beautifully reflecting in the family dynamics. And I'm sharing this with you because you have the capability to do the exact same thing. And I'm sharing this with you because I want you to know that you don't need anybody around you to change to achieve the results that you desire. Your outside environment doesn't necessarily need to change. It is all about starting from within. And when you start shifting your internal beliefs and your internal world, and you start doing the work there, the outside will start changing as a result of that. Opportunities will start showing up. The people around you will start treating you differently. I know because I've literally seen it happen. This holiday has really proven to me how much the work works. And it's incredible to see how powerful this work is. And just to quickly, before finishing off this topic, go back to the political discussion, because I'm sure there's a lot going on in the world right now. A lot of political conversations being had. And I'm sure in families, there's a lot of the time where you don't see eye to eye. And this was something that was a big concern of mine, because like I said, I see things and I have different sources of information that maybe some people may not have or can't comprehend. But I was nervous about that, because I know that my sister is very well read on these things, and she's very passionate, and so is my dad. My brother also, but not as much as the two of them. So I was like, okay, how's this going to go? Is this going to come up? These conversations, these opinions and things like that. And the beauty was that they did come up. We had a conversation. It was very civil. It was very respectful. I felt heard. I felt seen. But because I hadn't rooted 1000% to all my views, I could feel where I was still lacking information or rootedness to my beliefs, even though intuitively I knew the beliefs that I had were correct and I could root to intuitively feeling that it's correct. There were still pieces of the puzzle that I was like, oh, I started questioning. And why? And that's only because my sister and my brother were showing me and reflecting back to me where I was still missing rooting. So that's what's going to happen. So when you're having a conversation, even if it's about intuition or spirituality or about politics or anything for that matter that you fully believe in, you think you fully believe in, but and you're speaking to a loved one, because that's where you're going to notice it the most, either a partner or a family member or someone that you're close to. And they start challenging your perspective on things. They are literally showing you where you still need to root to your beliefs. So the things that they're challenging you on, they're going to pick the things that you haven't fully rooted to yet, and they're going to reflect that back to you. So even though you think you figured it all out and you're fully rooted to your beliefs, they're going to select that one thing that you haven't rooted to yet, and that's what they're going to ask questions about. And this is all part of how perfectly this system works, because that's how, through reflections, through these situations, through triggers, you're being shown that there is something that you still need to root to on a deeper level. So in that moment, when that happened, I actually was like, okay, interesting. I definitely need to root more to my beliefs around this topic. So I am going to, even though, intuitively I feel like I am fully rooted, there is still a percentage that I'm not rooted to. Otherwise, my brother and my sister wouldn't question the beliefs that I had. Because when you're fully the person that is most rooted to their beliefs, you're not going to question their beliefs, because you're just rooted to them. A big example of that, for example, is also with me drinking not drinking alcohol. My family used to challenge me a lot on that because I wasn't fully rooted to it. And now they don't challenge me anymore. They respect it. So that's a quick example of that. But with politics, it can be a little bit more difficult also because there is so much going on. And then when I intuitively check information and, channel certain things and things like that, it's one of those things where you need to just root to it more. So for me, this was really eye-opening because I didn't get emotional about it. I just was like, okay, cool. At least I didn't get consciously emotional about it. You never know. Subconsciously, you'll sometimes be surprised that your subconscious is like, yeah, you think you're not emotional, but you're slightly emotional. So maybe you should check in on that. But at least I wasn't like fully triggered or anything like that. So it was very interesting because I could observe and I could be like, cool. This is a good sign for me to root and dive into these topics a little bit more and get more information so that I'm fully solid on my beliefs. So that the thing with that is when you're solid on those beliefs, you will not be challenged anymore. And the only reason you're still being challenged is because there is something that you need to dive into deeper. And there is something that you need to root to slightly more. And that's what I wanted to share with you. And it's just really, really cool when you feel emotionally balanced, when you're with your family and you just see how the work that you've been doing fully shows up in that moment. And yeah, it was for me, it was very cool to observe. And it was really exciting to see how the work that I had been doing was working. It was just working. And it was one of the best trips that I have ever had with my family and in general. And it was one of those trips that I didn't want to leave, just also because of the location, because it's just my favorite place. And I think I wanted to show you and share this with you to show you how much is possible. Because I did it means you can do it. Like the things that I'm telling you inside this podcast, each and every one of you is capable of, and so much more. And it just blows my mind every single time when I do something or when I start rooting to something more, and how energetically things start to shift and how the results are just absolutely mind-blowing with this work. And I just don't want to gatekeep that from you because it's so freaking cool. And we're going to be diving a little more into all of that over the coming weeks. I have asked you guys and have heard loud and clear that you want to focus a lot on self-image. So we're going to do that over the next few weeks. And we have programs where I give you the tools where we do healings to get you rooted to your value, to your self-image, and get you fully stepping into your power. Because if you're feeling the new year energy, then grab it and like go with it. Don't let go of it. The only issue I have with that is that often we lose that momentum in February, March already. And I want you to hold on to that momentum and actually take that energy, use it, and step into your power in the new year and actually start seeing the value of who you are and what you're capable of. And understand that when you work through these things, the self-image, the value components, literally your reality starts to change. And it's really cool to see. And I wanted to share this with you to show you, and also to just let you know how this work is absolutely life-changing. And I just hope you had such amazing Christmas, such an amazing New Year's Eve. And I hope this gives you something to look forward to, something to be excited about in the new year, that even if you had triggers throughout the holidays, that now you can look back at them and be like, okay, that's so cool. Let's see, based on last year, how much I can shift within the next 12 months. Because I promise you, there is so much that you can shift and change within the next 12 months. It is mind-blowing. And even when you look back at yourself 12 months ago, compare yourself to now, and then think of where you can be in the new year, in 2027. Calm down, Manuk. We've only just started 2026. I know. But it's just exciting. It's just very exciting. And I hope that this podcast has gotten you as excited as it's gotten me. And I can't wait to dive into more topics over the new year and get you guys all tapping into that magnificent magic and power that you have within. It is so exciting. It is so fun. And I cannot wait. So I can't wait. Happy New Year. Let's get excited. And I hope to see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to You Can Call Me Goddess. I am so happy that you joined us in this show today. If you feel like this podcast gave you any sort of life change or value, then share it with someone you think would also get a lot of value out of it. Because maybe it could just be that one thing that changes that person's life. If you enjoyed the show, please give it a nice rating below or in the show, because we would love to expand more on topics that you enjoy and keep this podcast up and running. Anyways, thank you, beautiful, and I hope to see you in the next podcast.